My name is Maja Göpel, and I'm a professor for sustainability transformations, an author and a speaker. We have a tendency right now to put blame on different parts in our society. So it's either the consumer that doesn't want to buy the sustainable products, they don't want to pay for it, or it's the producers that are not offering them because the markup on the unsustainable bigger cars, for example, is higher, or it's the politicians. Before politicians are changing the rules, the CEOs can't really do it because sustainability isn't bankable, or it is the capital markets that don't allow for the companies to be performing differently. And this is how it goes round and round, and it allows for everyone to sit back and say, oh, until the others move, I can't really do anything, even though I would be so committed. And that's culturally not very helpful, because we're really, really in a stage of urgency when we look at the planetary state. This is what I'm trying to figure out, and I've gone for, coming from a scientific background, I do firmly hold up the belief of evidence being explained in a way that people can follow it, can agree to it, and I think democracies only can work like that. If you're allowing for people to contribute and to participate in the decision making, they should have the kind of information necessary for them to be able to judge what are the consequences of such decisions. And this is why the science communication has been at my heart these days. Saying that, I do know we're not rational beings. And so we have to also think about, I think, communities, peer pressure, peer inspiration, and the idea of who is we, I think, is some very, very important aspects right now coming out to say, who is daring to move first? What is that going to mean? Who am I going to associate myself with so I don't feel so singled out? Because quite often when we think about who goes for sustainability, you're going against the stream. You're taking higher risks right now under the current market setup. And this means we have to be enough. So we're talking about social tipping points and transformation studies, and how do we get towards them? It needs a particular narrative that people can feel they have a common purpose around, and then the daringness and exchange to know of each other so that it becomes something that turns into a trend, that turns into this tipping, into this becoming the new thing to do. And this is where I feel the evidence, but also the knowing of each other and the clarity about there is no turning back are really, really important. I think it is one of the big searches right now, but it also is something that I think is on the plate because people start sensing the insecurity and the confusion and the feeling very lost and the uncomfortability that comes with this. And we do have shifts looking at it historically from narratives about what it is, for example, to have freedom. And it's been very strongly in this, the individual should be free, and the individual was the unit we've looked at. And this is where I've come from the system change to say, no, we're not ever only parts. We're always partakers, and we're always part of webs of production, consumption, communication, living space. And so once we become more cognizant of this again, more interested again in how we connect it with everything else, we can A, see where our potential allies, and B, see, no, we're not alone. And the biggest challenge, I think, right now that we're facing, talking about cultural change, is to understand that humans are not separated from nature. This is the biggest connection that we've ever and always had, and that was the beginning of my talk yesterday, to say, it's all great what we can do with technology, but in the end we are biological beings. And our connection is not only through data transmission, our connection is through food, through air, through water, that has a certain quality and that can only be regenerated by our planet in a certain rhythm. So just accelerating everything, which is the kind of speed, was the second point that I've brought, from parts to particles and partakers, from only acceleration into rhythm, finding the rhythm of how living systems work. They have a regenerative cycle. And then use technology to support this to become stronger again. So we get from a very extractive way of using everything, like especially nature and people's abilities, into a regenerative one, where we're saying all things that we're doing should be allowing for the quality and the development of the ones involved, be it the spaces we're using or be it the people that are involved, to grow. Well, I think it starts with just wanting to find out, right? So feeling interested in understanding who's participating, who's contributing to what my well-being is composed of. And we do have, it is very close to the sustainability idea as well, to be more transparent. We've been talking about the impact investing to show what is happening by my choices. We've been talking about which regulations make it easier for us to be going for a sustainable lifestyle, because a lot of the policy frameworks, when we look at agriculture, but also industry and production, are not helping for the front runners of sustainable solutions to be easily coming into the markets, becoming the new normal, which makes it for consumers more difficult. But so just wanting to find out where these things start and where I, as a consumer, can make a choice. And we have put forward like food as one example thing, especially meat reduction would be a huge leverage point on all environmental concerns. But I think there's also something to be said about how we treat animals as co-fellow living beings here. Then there's the driving or the mobility choices and the flying, where we can really start thinking even about how much mobility is there as a need, or how can we satisfy needs for connection maybe differently, or work, remote work, etc. And then there is the kind of clothing, which is only now popping up. The whole fast fashion thing, producing very cheaply, has a strong north-south aspect to it and global equity aspects to it, and really unnecessary. We could go back to saying high quality, longer lasting products that I'm proud of, that have gone through history with me and I know stories about them. So all the away from all the consumption choices that are just digging it out and throwing it away whilst having a cheap price in the middle of it. That is not a sustainable choice. And then the finance is a huge lever as well. Where are we putting our money? Which companies are being enabled to grow, to become bigger, to take market shares from the ones that are offering the things that are not sustainable? And lastly, use your voice. We do need political change. We do need regulatory change. We need the change of the frameworks for action that are nudging us, that are incentivizing us, and are determining prices. Prices are always political, and especially when it comes to ecological change, we see it in the CO2 price. You can only have a market signal if it is a political choice. It won't fall from the sky. And that's with a lot of pricing mechanisms that are coming from the space of ecosystems. Because if we wait until there's a real scarcity and it's not there anymore, it is too late. They have tipping points. Then we've degraded them beyond return. So there is an absolute responsibility from policymakers to say we anticipate the change and we're going to put the market signals in place to warn us of that scarcity. And just as the last example, in the climate change, we see it so often that people are saying, oh, but there's still oil in the ground, there's no shortage of coal, etc. So what have the doomsday has been saying that we'd run out of resources for growth? The limited resource is not the fossil fuels, it is the atmosphere. The atmosphere that can only gobble up a certain amount of additionally produced CO2 that we're emitting. And that atmosphere has no voice. That atmosphere has no indicators for us to perceive unless we make them, we create them. And this is how people have always created institutions, created social technologies, created incentives to organize their co-living. And we have to make sure that all the institution-built or human-built institutions help us see the future that we want to bring about.